Welcome to Prospects to Pros. We talk draft here, and there aren't many bigger weeks in the draft season than NFL Combine Week. I'm here with Lance Zierlein. I'm here with Dane Brugler. We're all going to Indy. This is going to be a big week. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to see a bunch of people. There will probably be multiple slightly inebriated NFL executives. The coffee shop in the JW Marriott, the Starbucks is going to be hopping. How are we doing, guys?
Good. Yeah, this is one of the biggest weeks of the year, no doubt. It's the different schedule this year. Important for people to know that in terms of which positions are going which day. It's no longer a primetime thing. Each day or Thursday, Friday. So Thursday we have defensive line, linebackers. They start at 3 p.m. Friday is defensive back special teams. That's at 3 p.m. Saturday, we have the quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. That starts at 1. And then Sunday, we have the running backs and the offensive line. That starts at 1. So, yeah, it's a little bit different this year, which, I think they're tweaking it every year to try to make it better for everybody. This way people can still go out after the workouts. It's still good for TV. Hopefully we get more players doing every workout instead of all the running backs saying no thanks to the 3-cone, that type of thing. So, hopefully these little tweaks will help to make the event better.
Yeah. You want as much participation as possible. I think, one of the interesting things that's going to happen is when the combine moves from Indy's got it the next 2 years. But one of the quaint things about the combine is it's a big event in a small feeling town. And you have the ability to keep everything so centralized. So just from a logistics standpoint, it's great, but it's also great to be able to see all these people in one area. If it goes to another big city that is more sprawl oriented and is not downtown oriented, then you're really going to miss out on a lot of that stuff. A lot of that's going to go away because people will pick and choose the restaurants they go to, and they'll fly, they'll drive to different spots. And, but that has nothing to do with, listeners listening. But I will say that I don't hear a lot of people talk about moving the combine from Indy as a top priority. And so I'm going to enjoy this one and the one next year, because I don't know if it'll continue to stay there.
Yeah, I think given the actual reasoning for it, we talked about this on the last episode, the reason the combine even exists is to standardize the medical exams, and Indy was one of those places where you had a lot of that stuff in one centralized location. So it will be, you will hear a lot of complaining, but again, the listeners, viewers, I don't think they care. Here's what they care about. Who's going to run fast 40s? Who's going to bench a lot of reps at 225? Who's going to have a freaky jump, vertical jump number? Is there going to be some impulsive owner who sees somebody run a 40 and be like, I got to have that guy? Is that going to happen? So Dane had the idea that we go position by position. I think this is a great idea because, it depends on the position. It depends on the prospect, the situation. And you may or may not be working out. You may be stepping on a scale, doing the interviews, or there may be a lot for you to gain by working out. So shall we start with the position I know everybody loves talking about, quarterback? Because this is interesting to me, and I will throw it out there to you guys. Who are we going to see throw here?
I think that we don't know exactly who we're going to see throw yet. That's still I haven't heard anybody officially say they're not throwing, put it that way. But I think obviously, I think we have to start first with just Bryce Young, just stepping on the scale and getting the official height weight. That's going to be a big, and I believe that's happening. Saturday morning. That's going to be a big step for him. Honestly, I don't think I care that much. Look, he's small. He's going to be an outlier. Yeah. If he's 5'9.5" or 5'10.5", does it really matter that much? He's small. That's all I know. And so, but it'll be good to get those just official measurements. The guy that I cannot wait to see is Anthony Richardson, and I doubt he's going to test. Most quarterbacks don't. In terms, they're focusing all their time on repping their throws and getting better as a passer, preparing for the combine. They're not spending a lot of time working on the 40 and the proper stance and all that. Who knows? Maybe he will because he just wants to flex, just like Justin Fields did at his pro day. He running as fast as he did. Maybe we'll be able to see that from Anthony Richardson. We can hope. But it all comes down to what he looks like at Lucas Oil Stadium throwing the football. I think Lance. I know you agree with this, but there's just something about seeing a quarterback throw the ball in person that is such an important part of the evaluation. And just seeing it explode off his hand, the effortless velocity. Richardson, he could put on a show. Now, obviously, the pacing, the accuracy, the placement, that matters as well. But he doesn't have to be perfect, just can't be below average in those areas. But the way he can spin it, I think that's going to stick with people that are in Lucas Oil Stadium watching it live. That's going to stick with them for a while.
Well, he can throw really far. He can throw it with a lot of juice. The accuracy is what I want to see. I don't care. I already know he can throw far. So, that's a show off throw, and I know he's going to make it. What I want to see is those breaks where they run the little, they run those deeps, the intermediate slants where they come out of the break and turn and look for the football. That's always a really good throw. And the sideline throw. Sideline throw shows you timing. Well, both of them show you timing. That's what I want to see. I want to see how he strides. I want to see what the footwork looks like. I want to see if he's delivering the ball consistently to the hands where he's supposed to. There's a lot for him to gain there, throwing the precision throws, not throwing the deep. I mean, I know the deep ball is going to be good, so it needs to be accurate too. So I do think that's something that, how accurate will he be on the deep throws. Anthony Richardson is the guy that is going to impress just being out there in the shirt and shorts and the way it comes off the hands. I remember I was down when Carson Wentz threw, and it was like, wow, it sounded, you could really hear the ball come out. The same thing with, who was the other quarterback? I think it was Mahomes. It was either Mahomes or trying to remember who the other quarterback is, but there's just a big difference when you're on the field. Also, you kind of can feel the energy of a player as well. It's funny because what coaches look for, Andy, is a lot of coaches, and especially the guys who are the group leaders, you have scouts or you have position coaches who are the group leaders for particular groups, NFL coaches. My dad did offensive line one year, and they come out of there, they're paying very close attention to see who has the alpha and the leadership characteristics in a group. They pay very close attention to that kind of stuff. So that's something that you may or may not be able to see on TV. You can certainly get a feel for it if you're on the ground floor. Watching live is cool, but I get to go down onto the ground floor, and it's like almost a completely different level watching a ball come out from there.
Well, and the combine throwing experience is different from the pro day, right? Because the pro day is a lot more stage managed. Your private QB coach is drawing a script essentially. The combine is they tell you to throw this throw and you throw it.
Yeah, and what's coming, so you have a chance to rep those throws, but it's more it's a little more difficult. And the thing too is you're throwing to receivers that you've never thrown to, where the pro day you're throwing to your guys, and so you have that repertoire. But with the combine you're throwing to different receivers, and so the timing, like Lance mentioned, that's really important. And something that's interesting too with these guys, they throw alphabetical order. You feel bad for the guy that's throwing right after Anthony Richardson. Who's throwing right after Anthony Richardson? It's CJ Stroud because of the alphabetical order. So, and CJ Stroud doesn't have a power arm, and that'll be evident when you see it off Richardson's arm and then Stroud's arm. But I mean, I think it's plenty good enough. Yeah. But the thing is Stroud is why we talk about him as a top 5 pick. He's naturally accurate, and so. Could that be a bad thing for Richardson if he's not on point with his throws? Meanwhile, Stroud right after him, boom, pinpoint every single time. So that's going to be interesting with both those guys back to back.
Here's my prediction. Bryce Young. So I'm really interested to see if this happens. I'm going to predict Bryce Young comes in at 201 pounds, doesn't run, doesn't throw, and waits for pro day, and then doesn't measure at pro day.
Doesn't weigh at pro day. Yep. Exactly.
That's 100%. What I think is going to end up happening.
So Bryce Young is eating a lot of pizza and milkshakes right now, and then we'll be in the best shape.
I wish I was Bryce Young in so many different ways. Like I could have queso every day, cheesecake. Like, can you imagine what an amazing opportunity
you could afford the extra charge for queso if you're Bryce Young.
Exactly.
It's kind of silly though. I mean, honestly, like teams know you're not 200 pounds. Teams know next year you're going to be playing at 192. So what's the point?
It's only a media narrative that could, it'd be a new talking point on ESPN. Could talk about it for 1 week straight of the same topics. By the way, if you're working out, I know that you've continued to see the same topics again all week long, Andy. It's the same. It's the same Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, they squeezed a Dak question in too. They managed to shoehorn another Dak question in. So
it's quarterback talk. Like it's a big deal. That's why we're starting with quarterbacks.
And I think, I want to mention, by the way, my prediction for Bryce Young, 5'10" and a half, 194. That's what I'm going to go with. We do want to mention Will Levis coming off that foot injury. Mentioned it before. I don't think people realize just how hurt he was down the stretch with that foot, getting injections and all that. Wasn't able to be at the Senior Bowl because of it. Is he going to be full go for Combine week? And then obviously the medicals will be important just to make sure that he'll be cleared. So definitely need to mention that with Levis.
It is going to be a kind of the eyes on these guys because there's so much fluctuation, as we talked about in the last episode, with the quarterback position, because you don't know, do you want to draft one of these guys? Do you want to get Carr? Do you want to try to get Aaron Rodgers? Like there are so many different ways to go with this. So these guys will be picked over with a fine tooth comb. Let's move to another one of the sexy positions. I want to go to edge rusher here. And this is one where we went into the season probably saying, Will Anderson is the number 1 or number 2 guy in this draft. Do we still feel that way? And then who else are we really looking to pop in this in this setting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. I don't know if you saw my comp for him on Twitter. I'm officially going with Cocaine Bear.
Nice.
Because this guy at 275 pounds, he might come close to Travon Walker territory in the 4.5s.
Wow.
This guy has a ton of juice. He's going to be the size measurables are going to be impressive, and then just the twitch that he has and such a powerful body, I think that's going to be on full display. So Lucas Van Ness will definitely leave this week as a winner. And then Tyree Wilson, are we going to be able to see him? He had that foot injury late in the year. Wasn't able to be at the Senior Bowl because of it. He's another guy that could, surely help himself after he's done working out. But
whispers are he's not going to work out,
and that's not surprising considering even if he is good to go, he hasn't had time to train, hasn't had time to, really get, where he wants to be to show off. Because this is another guy, 6'5 and a half, probably 270 pounds. The arms are 35 and a half. I mean, the measurements are going to look great. But yeah, it would be too bad if we don't get to see him work out.
Mm-hmm. I think Will Anderson's still one of the top 2 guys. I think Will's going to work out. He's going to work out good. Lucas Van Ness is going to work out great, as you mentioned. And, if you think about this, Trayvon Walker, so Lucas Van Ness is not a skilled rusher. He doesn't really have rush skill. And then you look at a guy like AJ Epinesa, who came before him, is very skilled, but he didn't have the athletic stuff and the explosiveness that Van Ness has. And so when you look at where Trayvon Walker was maybe on tape versus where he got drafted, a lot of that is based on, potential and traits in the workout. And I think the more Dane was talking, the more I realized Van Ness is going to go, I would say I don't think he's a top 15 player in this draft, but I think he's going to end up going there. I didn't have him in my mock draft because I really stayed true kind of to my ratings, and I've got him 31st rated player, which is in every draft I grade it like every it doesn't matter which draft you're in. I gave him a 6.38, which is a plus starter, but was typically more of a maybe a late first to early second round pick, but he's going to go a lot higher than that. And if he works out, if he really kills it at the combine, I will make incremental changes to grades, plus, minus. Sometimes I've had to make big ones because guys have literally hit numbers that were so bad that you have. Now, I didn't go crazy with Orlando Brown because you knew it was coming. But sometimes if you got a wide receiver who runs in a 4.7s, that's just a problem for most wide receivers. Here's something too that's going to be interesting. Last year, the talk was about all these defensive linemen that ran really well. That was a new track that Indianapolis had it confirmed. It was a new track, and so it was really fast track. So most teams were able to take the numbers that were record-setting numbers last year, and they were able to alter it, to kind of normalize it. I'm curious if that track is still a really fast track, because if it's not, for whatever reason, if it's broken in, or I don't know how it would work, the numbers will come out slower than last year. And I wonder if that's going to become a talking point for people, or if it's just a fast track and that's the way it is, then this is going to be the second consecutive year of guys having some really, really monster 40 times.
Now, guys, you're saying it's not going to happen with Van Ness necessarily, but how much did what Trayvon Walker did at the combine relate to him moving to number one? How much of that was the push to number one?
Well, I mean, it's twofold, right? It's the fact that we didn't have that quarterback last year. We didn't have that, I mean, who was he competing with to be the number one pick? Aiden Hutchinson. It's like, there wasn't that clear top level guy like a Jalen Carter this year, even a Will Anderson. But I mean, going into the combine, Trayvon Walker was my 6th overall player. So he was already pretty, I mean, and part of that was I knew he was going to test really well, and there was a projection and all that. But yeah, I mean, if he doesn't test like he does in Indianapolis, he probably doesn't go one. So I think that definitely plays a part. And I think, Lance, you mentioned Will Anderson. I think he'll test really well also. But I'm also interested, how much does he weigh? Is he going to be over, under 245? Hopefully he is. I know earlier this year, I know he was playing in the 240s. I don't know. Is he losing weight so he can run faster? Hopefully he is over 250. He's, more along the lines of what you expect from a edge rusher, and still putting up impressive numbers. So that'll be important for Anderson.
Miles Murphy's going to be a big tester.
Oh yeah.
Expected to, jump 35 vertical.
At 275.
At 275, he's going to be in high 4.5s to low 4.6s. Another guy on the edge that I really like a lot, but I think his weight is going to be important too, is Will McDonald from Iowa State. He's just kind of a thin-waisted guy, so I don't know how much weight he can carry. I think it's important to be if he can, to be in the upper 240s. He is going to have a vertical of over 40 inches. He is going to sky. Yeah. I've seen him jump over a car. He'll have a broad jump of over 11 feet. So when it comes to the jumps, Will McDonald from Iowa State, who I think is a good football player too and a good rusher, he's really going to be one of these guys, along with Mike Morris from Michigan, another one. Michigan just, man, Ben Herbert over there, their strength coach, all he does is crank out guys who test like maniacs. DJ Turner, the cornerback, is also going to test like a maniac. Like, if you're coming out of Michigan, you are going to test like a mother. And they all have good short area quickness stuff. And Mike Mo, who we're not really talking much about him that much, but he's going to – this guy's like 290 pounds and is going to move like he's 250.
Yeah, Will McDonald, you go back to his track days, he won the state discus title. I think he was 3rd in the state in the high jump. And this is, he was more of a basketball player in high school. I have my questions with Will McDonald as a run defender, and just how raw he is for a 5th-year senior who's, going to be 24 years old. So that worries me to a certain extent. But yeah, I agree. There's no doubt he's going to blow it up with his testing. And I'd throw Derek Hall in there, the Auburn pass rusher. He's a guy that is going to run really well. Keon White from Georgia Tech, who we've talked about quite a bit before. He's 6'5", 280. The testing that he's going to put in will be impressive. And then I've heard Tennessee's Byron Young, the pass rusher, who, another guy, has some limitations, but the explosiveness that he has when the energy is full go, he has a chance to put up some really impressive testing numbers as well.
So let's flip to the guys that are going to be blocking those guys, because Lance brought up a name that I think is interesting in relation to the combine, and that's Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown has been a very good offensive tackle in the NFL. He was a very good offensive tackle at Oklahoma. He had one of the worst combines you will ever see in your life. Yeah. How much does that play in to things with this particular position?
And I think as it relates to DeJuan Jones, it'll be interesting. The Ohio State mammoth tackle, who is one of the biggest human beings you'll ever see. And I think it's just about, can he be more average than below average? When you look at the testing numbers, one of the big reasons why we still do these tests is for comparison purposes. Okay, a guy, we expected him to jump better. Okay, well, who are the tackles that were below 26 in the vertical. Did any of these guys pan out? And so like it's using those comparisons is helpful as you how these athletes translate to the next level. And so for a guy like DeJuan Jones, where do his numbers come in? And does he, if he's not hitting certain numbers, does he even work out? So that'll be big for him.
Yeah, short shuttle. There's only certain things like, for offensive line, I can just tell you this for a fact. There's just certain things. I don't care about 40. Some teams care about first 10, the 10-yard split, and that's it. They really care about flexibility. So while they do care about some of the on-field workouts, some of them they don't like. There's a story about there was like these 3 crusty old offensive line coaches, because that's just what they are. My dad's one of them. That's just how they are. And they're not for the BS. They don't care about all your stupid drills that you're trying to do. They only want certain drills. And at one point, my dad said there was 3 coaches who were yelling out on the field at things they wanted to see. And they do this at Senior Bowl too, where they'll yell out, get them in the drum. Like, they're yelling. Why don't they do this? Show them in the short set. And a jump set them. Do that. And they're yelling because there's things they want to see that are very specific. They don't care about the 40. Now, do they want to see him get out and pulling? Yeah, they want to see that. They want to see, the short area testing, some of the not 3-cone necessarily as much as maybe the short shuttle, the change of direction. But you can see that although the rabbit drill is different now, right? The mirror drill, I think they changed it, how they did that. But the mirror drill is, you can see it. That's kind of important. I really get less from the testing and more from the field work, honestly, although they do like explosive hips. So there are jumps, if you're jumping really, really low, that can be a little bit of a concern. And bench press, bench press, I understand that it's not football strength necessarily. However, I have seen plenty of guys who are very low in the bench press who end up not being functionally strong enough. Now, you have to check arm length because longer arms, harder to do it. And you have to make sure there's no shoulder issues in terms of injury or something they're dealing with. But as long as you hit 20 on bench press, they'll typically be okay with you. As long as you're vertical, what is it on tackles? The old number was 29.48. So if you're 30 or above, you're hitting NFL standards. So there are standards they'll look for, but I don't think you can kill yourself. Even Orlando Brown was a second rounder after his bad combine.
Oh, no, and I went to his pro day after that, and obviously he improved his bench, but he was pretty forthcoming about all that stuff. He's like, look, I'm not going to bench well. I have very long arms, but look at the tape. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, and Lance, I'm glad you mentioned the field drills, because that's a huge part of this that often gets overlooked by the 40 and all these things. I mean, for wide receivers, I'm not missing the gauntlet. That's a really helpful exercise to see these guys pick up the football, finish catches, their balance running down the line. For edge rushers, defensive linemen, love to see them, run the hoop. Just to see the bend, see them, the quickness at that size. So absolutely, some of these positional drills are really, really important, that you don't necessarily need a stopwatch. You just use your eyes and tell, okay, this guy's, really flexible, or no, he's struggling here.
Yeah. And I like for offensive tackles, I like when you set out, when they have you pass setting and there's a man coming up just around the edge and you're supposed to get out to him. It really shows hip tightness, like whether or not you've got the ability not only to slide quickly, but you have enough looseness in your hips that you can gain ground in terms of the distance in your slide and keeping your width. So there's stuff that works. I think Darnell Wright may not be a great tester. I have questions about that, but he is going to be a first-round offensive tackle.
Chance, yeah.
And I think, this is a big one for Paris Johnson, because I'm sorry, on tape, I don't see all the hype of being a top 12 pick on tape. But if he tests really well, I think that's really going to help him. Osiris Torrance, don't expect him to be a big tester. He's a tape guy. But, he also has an 84-inch wingspan. That is a full 7-foot wingspan, and his arms are only like 33 and a quarter. You know what that means? He is so broad across his back that it extends – the wingspan, but
his hands are over 11 inches. I mean, this is
it's a massive pause, massive. And so I'm trying to look and see if there's anyone that's going to shock that maybe hasn't, that wasn't a Senior Bowl.
Well, I mean, Blake Freeland from BYU. This guy
Good
was.
tester, yeah.
I mean, he was a former high school quarterback and big time. I mean, he was the Gatorade's boys track athlete of the year as a senior. Shot put, discus, javelin. I mean, his shot put was top 5 in the country his senior year. And so Skaronski is another guy who had one of the best shot put numbers in high school. We'll see how that translates. Darnell Wright, who you mentioned, he won the state title in the shot put. So it'll be interesting, some of these track numbers, to see if they how they carry over. And then Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin, who's he's my top ranked center this year. He is a top tier athlete for 320 pounds. I think the strength numbers should be pretty impressive with him. Very eager to see his short shuttle, his 10-yard. I wouldn't be surprised if they're among the best in this class.
So let's talk receivers a little bit, because you guys were mentioning the gauntlet drill and you love to see that. There's a couple of guys in here that we haven't seen as much of because of injuries. Like, are we going to see Jackson Smith and Jigba for the first time in a while? Because obviously the last time we really saw him play was that Rose Bowl against Utah, and he was amazing. But that was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how he's going to run. I wonder if
No.
they're going to try to hide him a little bit from a running standpoint.
This year's
some fast guys in this year's class.
This year's Drake London. Remember, Drake London last year he's nursing that injury the entire time. Finally, is able to work out at his pro day in mid-April, and he doesn't do any testing. He just catches the football. And so, and obviously he fell. Oh no, he was the first receiver drafted, so it didn't hurt him. Now Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think we know he's not a burner. We know if we're going to put a number to him, it's probably in the 4.55 range. But he's just a really good football player. So that will be interesting with Smith and Jigba. Is he 100% full go? How long is he be able to train for this? So I wouldn't be surprised if we do not see him work out. Lance, what's the over under on Jalen Hyatt's 40? I want to get this number from you.
If he runs, and I've heard he may not run actually.
He's not going to show off.
No, I think there may be something going on with him, a hammy or something like that is the rumor. But if he does run, I would make his, from what I've heard, his times would either be somewhere between 4.28 and 4.33.
Whew.
Yeah, I mean but Andy, I mean, so Tank Dell is going to run in the low 4.3s. He'll run in the mid 4.3s, I think. You're going to have Tyler Scott, former track man.
Yep.
Tyler Scott's going to, I think, break 4.4.
Yep.
He'll be in the 4.3s. I would expect Trey Tucker can really run.
Oh yeah.
Marvin Mims will run pretty well. He'll run pretty well, but there's going to be
Quentin Johnston.
Quentin Johnston should run well.
At 6'4", 215 pounds. He'll probably be over 11 feet in the broad, above 40 inches in the vert. And then if he gets under 4.45, I mean, this guy, that's a testing. That's why we're talking about Quentin Johnston as a possible first-round pick, because of those numbers. And yes, he is still raw in areas. Yes, drops more catches than you want to see. Had more drops last year than touchdown catches. But when you just not many athletes that look like that. And another big guy who I think is going to test much better than people think is Cedric Tillman.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that, because he's my wide receiver 4. If you have to go back and look at him in 2021. Do you know that he put up 353 yards on Georgia and Alabama in 21? He annihilated those two teams. His 2021 tape was like, wow. He played through an ankle injury where he went and had surgery. I think he had the tightrope surgery. So that he could come back and play with his brothers and compete. I mean, A+ for football character, for toughness, and for competitiveness there. And 2022 is just, the tape's kind of average. But when you go back to when he was playing on a tough ankle all year long after he got it in the third game. If you go watch him in 2021, he's a ball winner. I made his comp, I think, Michael Pittman. He's a ball winner. He can play, makes plays down the field. Like, he's what a big wide receiver looks like, who can make plays. Less juice than like a Mike Williams, but I think he's got Michael Pittman style characteristics. And you think he could test okay, Dane?
I don't be surprised if he hits 40 in the vert and runs somewhere in that mid 4.4 range at 6'3", 215. He has that type of ability. And I'm with you. It's funny. I wrote down Michael Pittman and Nico Collins.
Yep.
Tillman.
That's a good one.
I mean, he's an outside receiver who, you spoke about the injury. We didn't see him at full health this year. Didn't get to see him at the Senior Bowl. This guy, I tweeted it yesterday. I had him way too low in my top 100. Going back and reading my report, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm reading this, and he's a top 60 pick all day based on how I'm reading my report. So, I expect him to test pretty well. He's a good one. And another one and I'm glad you mentioned Tyler Scott. I think it's going to be interesting to compare Tyler Scott and Tyler Lockett's numbers. When they were coming out, Tyler Lockett had some pretty good numbers. I think Tyler Scott will be right there with each one of those guys because I think they're very similar players. Tyler Scott is a top 50 pick all day, in my opinion. And I know you like him too, Lance. Trey Palmer from Nebraska. He won the 200 meters all 4 years of high school. That's not easy to do. So he's going to test really well. And then we have to mention our Princeton guy, Yoshevich, who set an NCAA record in the 60 meters. And the 60 meters translates more to the 40 than any other.
Yeah, he's going to be a great
track deal. So yeah, he'll test pretty well.
Some guys that I think need to run pretty well. I would say, first of all, Keishon Butte, who should test well, but his tape is so uneven this year that he needs to have a good combine or he's going to sink his stock.
Interviews too, right?
Yeah, interviews too. Jonathan Mingo. I think for his size, I like Mingo. I just think he needs to run a decent time. I think A.T. Perry needs to run a decent time. And I think Josh Downs, if Josh Downs runs really well, I'm higher on him than other people. But, there have been some people I've talked to who don't expect him to be this blazing player, but boy, he seems fast on tape. So
he's sudden, really sudden.
Very sudden. Josh he has basketball athleticism, but
yeah,
Downs, Addison, Zay Flowers, and maybe even Tyler Scott. We've got a clump of the same type of wide receivers, and so the combine could end up being a cluster buster of sorts.
Well, speaking of cluster buster, and it's not necessarily because they're all the same. We've talked about how deep this tight end class is. Who can kind of separate themselves based on how they work out?
Well, I mean, they're going to rename the combine after Luke Musgrave works out, right? I mean, this guy is an unbelievable athlete at that size. The speed's going to be great. The jumps are going to be great. And obviously, the medicals will be big for him at the combine. Check that knee. I mean, he looked like he was moving okay at the Senior Bowl, but just make sure no issues with the knee. The reason he missed most of this past year. So yeah, Luke Musgrave has all the ability in the world to light up the combine with his testing. And then, Dalton Kincaid, not far behind him, probably the best pure pass catcher, maybe this entire draft, not just the tight ends, maybe the entire draft. And then I think Michael Mayer, we've kind of typecast Michael Mayer as the inline guy, the true Y who not going to run great, but he'll block. Well, it's not. No, that Michael Mayer is a good athlete. If he comes in, say 255, 260, I won't be surprised if he runs in the low 4.6s. I mean, this is a really good athlete. And while I really like Musgrave, I really like Kincaid, Darnell Washington, but Michael Mayer is still my top tight end.
If Mayer runs in the 4.6s, and especially low 4.6s, that's going to be a big story around the NFL because he doesn't look on tape as athletic as the other two tight ends. And if he tests well like that, that's really going to help his cause. Musgrave's going to jump over 36. His broad jump's going to be over 10 feet. He's expected to run in a 4.5s. I know there's thoughts that he'll run in the low 4.5s, but his broad should be 10 foot, 36.5 vertical, 4.51 is supposedly he's a former long jumper and triple jumper. So this guy has all kinds of, athletic stuff. So he's going to be the best tester out of those tight ends. But Dalton,
Andy, real quick, Andy, I want to see if you can guess his, Musgrave was a 4-sport standout in high school. Let's see if you can name the 4 sports.
Oh, I kind of need to know where he's from. If he's
from Oregon.
He's from Oregon.
Yeah, outside of Portland.
All right. So football, basketball, volleyball.
Yeah, no, you missed the last 3.
Really?
Yeah.
He's not a volleyball guy?
Nope.
I would have said volleyball all day.
He wasn't a basketball either. I don't know the 4 sports. I know one of them, which you're about to hit.
No basketball, no baseball, no
wrestling.
Well, no. I mean, Lance mentioned track, so obviously
track,
football and track, and
then
the other one was or the other 2. He was a champion alpine skier,
Oh, wow.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then lacrosse, big time
Oh,
lacrosse player.
okay.
Yeah, he was
So
all
Sam
conference
Hubbard
lacrosse.
vibes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little different for sport athlete in high school than most other athletes.
Very interesting. Yeah, the California. It's actually more California. You get the volleyballs,
That's
and
true.
but the lacrosse and alpine skiing. That
Oh,
is
he was
a
a championship skier when he was like 14, 15.
Yep.
He ended up giving it up. But when you watch him run his routes, like you see the hips, you see it. It's like he's literally slaloming between bodies out of when he gets out of his stance and gets around, or he's got hips and hands. I mean, he's got hips and feet of a skier. And I like multi-sport athletes. It's always
Oh
a
yeah.
good thing to see a multi-sport athlete. And so Musgrave is going to kill the combine. Kincaid, it's important, I think, for him to break 4.7 because everyone knows what a pass catcher. The question on him is speed a little bit, but really he's not a blocker, so that's not really his thing. If Mayer tests well, I mean, I think if these guys all test well, I personally think they all go in the first. I think there's going to be 3 tight ends in the first. I really do. I don't see Darnell Washington going in the first. I don't think Darnell's going to be a great tester. I think he's going to run pretty slow.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. He's kind of stiff-legged. Might jump well, but I'm not sure. I'm interested to see what he comes in at. This summer, he was listed at 6'7", 270. I mean, I'm really interested to see what, and he does, and he's pure muscle too, Andy.
Right.
I mean, he is pure muscle. So I'm really curious to see what he comes in at. I've had more than one conversation with teams about whether or not they would consider him as a potential tackle translation, but the technique is really not very good as a blocker right now. So in the hands, so it would take some work. So you keep him and I was told by his O-line coach told me he's a mismatch in.
Yeah,
He's a
I think
mismatch in the red zone.
Potentially a more productive pass catcher not at Georgia than at Georgia because of the way Georgia uses Brock Bowers and some of their other weapons.
Well, look at him on the goal line. So his coach said he's a mismatch in the red zone because he's bigger than everybody. So if as far as catching the ball, you throw it up to him and let him get it. But secondly, you got a guy with the power of a tackle basically. While his hand placement may not be great, you got a guy who can cave in. If you're squeezing everybody down, who's over him? A 245-pound linebacker, and he's mauling those guys.
I think his meager production is more because he was just so good as a blocker that they couldn't justify taking him out of that role.
He actually has ball skill. He has ball skills.
Oh yeah, he does. I'm with you. I can't wait to see that 40 because I agree with you. He is a little stiff-legged, but his strides are so long.
It can fool you sometimes.
Yeah, and they're so strong that that first 20 compared to the second 20, that'll be interesting.
All right, 4.74, over or under?
Under.
You think so?
That's a good one. I would probably say slightly over, but you know what? When these guys train, who knows? Anything's possible. So that's a good number though.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of 40 times, we talked about receivers who are. They're going to run some of the fastest. The other group that will run the fastest 40s are the corners.
Yeah.
Who do we say just, wow, they burned it up? Does it matter? Like, Christian Gonzalez, everybody seems pretty confident is their favorite guy. Joey Porter Jr., everybody loves. But who else may come up out of this where maybe they had a good end of the season, a good Senior Bowl, and then they add a big 40 to it? And you're like, ooh, okay.
I know the name. Waiting for you to get to it. There's a guy who may run, there's a guy who's got a chance to break the combine record on the 3-cone drill and who has a chance to run a low 4.3s. Who do you think that is?
At corner? Well, okay. Let me workshop this. So Christian Gonzalez, he's going to run amazing.
He's going to test well. He's going to be great at everything. Yep, that's obviously not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, Keely Ringo is going to be impressive at 6'2", 215.
He ran a 10.4 300 meters in high school, so he can run. I mean, he's going to be a sub-4 guy, 4.4 guy.
Oh yeah. He'll be 4.3s. The one guy that I can't wait to see is Darius Rush. South Carolina, who had a great Senior Bowl. This guy, the triple jump. We talked to people that pay a lot of attention with track and how that translates to football. They always mention the triple jump. as a way to really something that really translates. And Darius Rush was a state champion triple jumper. I think he's going to come in and test really well. It's pure speed. I mean, Terrell Smith from Minnesota is going to be up there at his size. Travius Hodges Tomlinson will be up there.
He's going to be a 4'3" guy with a 42-inch vertical. Travius Hodges Tomlinson is not big, but he is going to test extremely well.
Right. It's just you have to get past that 5'7.5" with him. Okay, so who do we have left here? I mean, DJ Turner will
there. It is DJ Turner. GJ Turner was on the freak list also, which the freak list to me is like the Bible of explosive athletes.
It's a great resource.
Shout out Bruce Feldman.
Shout out Bruce Feldman, who's phenomenal at that. DJ Turner, as I said, Ben Herbert, the strength coach over there at Michigan, knows how to train these guys up. And this is another Michigan guy. And you see Kwity Paye, Aiden Hutchinson. It really doesn't matter. David Ojobo would have did he test the combine? No, yeah, he did test the combine, right?
He
didn't get hurt until pro day,
right? Yeah,
he got hurt at the pro day. But DJ Turner's the next. Also, the slot, Daxon Hill, Dax Hill. He was a big tester. DJ Turner is going to run fast. His 3 cone is going to be ridiculous as well. He's going to, and by the way, I like him a lot. Like, I think DJ Turner is a good cornerback.
He's a top 75 pick. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got him even higher than that, but Deontay Banks, I think, should test well. So it's going to, my 3 fastest, I think, are going to be Turner. I'm going to say Turner, Tomlinson, Hodges Tomlinson, and DJ Turner, with Gonzalez checking in right around there too.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, DJ Turner, with Gonzalez, you look at, I mean, we've talked about his family, the bloodlines, dad being a professional basketball player, his 2 older sisters, both accomplished track athletes. The one, Melissa,
remember David Blau on Hard Knocks? That's his wife.
Yeah,
Christian Gonzalez's sister is his wife. Yeah,
and she competed in the Olympics in Tokyo 2 years ago. So this is, he got some of those genes as well, and it's going to show up big time. So one guy that I can't wait to see is Joey Porter, because this guy will smother you in press, but he is a little tight, and there is a little bit of the change of direction skills that you worry about a little bit. And so, what does his 3 cone look like? I mean, I'm really eager to see him move out there in space.
So we were talking about DJ Turner and Michigan guys on the freaks list. Let's move on to interior D line, because the number 1 guy on Bruce Feldman's freaks list last year was Mozzie Smith, the D tackle for Michigan. Where does he fall? Based on what was on the freaks list, he close script benched 550 pounds. Obviously, you're not doing that at the combine, but it means you're going to have a lot of reps at 225. He broad jumped 9.4.5. His vertical at 337 pounds, 33 inches.
Oh.
I mean, a lot of buzz on this dude.
Well, his 3 cone was under 7 seconds too, right?
Yeah, that's wide receiver time.
Yeah. That's mind blowing for a guy that size. I mean,
that's wide receiver time.
The average. So I take the top 20. I do this every year. The top 20 defensive at every position. Top 20 defensive tackles. Their average testing number in the 3 cone.
Do you do that post? Oh, you do. You're saying testers, or you using top 20 drafted?
No, top 20 just in the NFL. So the top 20 defensive tackles in the NFL right now take all their testing information and take the averages at each event.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
The average 3 cone or the top 20 defensive tackles in the NFL is 7.40. And this guy's going to run under 7. That's we're talking about almost half a second. That's ridiculous.
They had to customize a machine in their weight room. They have a twist machine, basically, that you kind of move. I'm saying this. We're seeing each other in video. I know the listeners can't see this, but basically you have a handle in each hand, and you're twisting your torso and moving this weight. And it's to deal with being twisted in the trenches or trying to twist an opponent. And the machine tops out at 300 per side. So 300 per arm, 600 total. They had to customize it to get it up to 800 total because 600 was too easy for Mozzie Smith.
Unreal. Jeez. I mean, it's like he's a good football player. The testing is probably going to give him a little boost, even though we know it's coming. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up on. Does he sneak into that first round? Does he more of an early 2? That will be an interesting one. I know one defensive tackle that is a little bit of an enigma because I didn't love the tape. I thought the tape was good, not great. But then he went to the Senior Bowl, had a great week. Talk about at Barrier from Northwestern. He's going to be another explosive tester. He's another guy that could be under 7 seconds in the 3-cone. Going to test real. I think in Bruce's freaks list, he was like 37.5 in the vert. So the testing should be really impressive. The jumps. But again, I thought based on tape, he looked like a mid-rounder, and based off of the Senior Bowl and the testing, we'd be talking about him as a top 50 guy. So that'll be a really interesting test case with him.
Yeah, Zach Pickens, I think, is going to actually test pretty well from South Carolina, is another one to keep your eye on. Colby Wooden, who's a DN to D tackle kind of player. He's kind of an even front end, should be a pretty good tester out of Auburn. And I mean, Kalijah Cansey almost has to be a great tester. You almost have to be a phenomenal tester. And I think he needs to jump well.
Yeah.
You're right. That's the biggest one, is what does the scale look like?
Yeah. So he's listed at like 6 foot 280. So
yeah, if he's 5'11", you see, that's one of those things that would really hurt him just psychologically for teams. If he's under that 6 foot number, it's going to be tough for some teams to get around that in terms of where they slot him, even if they love what kind of player he is. He has first round talent.
Aaron Donald was 6'006", so 6 foot and 3/4, 6'1", basically. So yeah, I mean, along the lines of what you're saying, just being above that 6 foot number means something.
All right, guys. Here's a couple positions where it can either be decidedly unsexy or completely freaky. Linebackers and safeties. These are the ones we haven't gotten to, and it feels like.
Oh, one other one too. The got to talk about running backs.
Oh, we don't. Oh, that's right. We do have to talk about running backs. You're exactly right. So where do you want to go with this? We'll spin the wheel. Running backs, linebackers, or safeties?
Let's get the defense out of the way. Then we'll go to running back, because I think the running back's going to have the fastest 40 this year. So
let's go with the linebackers right now, because and obviously this is a wide net. They're a Sam, a Will, and a Mike are different depending on what sort of scheme you're playing. It's different, but who is going to wow in testing in this group?
I mean, really, I think the top 2 linebackers this year, whatever order you have them, Drew Sanders, Trenton Simpson, both these guys should. They're
gonna be big testers.
Yeah, they should be just showing off. I mean, Trenton Simpson, he's straight out of central casting with the frame, the muscle tone. A good chance at 235, he's in the 4.4s. The lower body explosion's awesome. Drew Sanders, Lance, I feel like you and I are maybe higher on him than others, but you look at the production.
They'll figure it out, Dane. Give him some time. They'll figure it out.
He dabbled as a sprinter in high school, and he still holds like one of the top 10 times ever in Denton Ryan high school history in the 100 meters. Like, this guy is an athlete. And so those 2 guys, Simpson, Sanders, should show really well for themselves. Auburn, I mean, this is like the 4th Auburn player we've talked about. The linebacker, I forgot his name. Papo.
Owen Papo. Yeah.
They call him the freak. I mean, he had that back in middle school. I mean, he had double-digit scholarship offers as like 8th grader. This guy's been like legendary for a while, and so hopefully he's good to go for the combine. I know he missed the Senior Bowl with an injury. Demervion Overshown, the Texas linebacker, former safety, former defensive back. So no surprise, he should test well. And then I'm told Jeremy Banks from Tennessee should test well. And then I'm eager to see Ivan Pace, who is just one of the best pure football players that just doesn't quite have, check every boxes in terms of what you're exactly looking for traits wise. But man, this guy is an MMA fighter on the football field, and I think his 40 will look great. I'm interested in some of the other drills, though.
Yeah, I love. I don't have a great grade on him just because I just question how he will be used. You see his body type next to the other guys, like you see him next to Deion Henley, and it's night and day. And one guy's chiseled from granite, and Ivan Pace looks like a regular guy. And yet then you turn on the tape and you watch his instincts, and it's amazing. He knows exactly where the ball's going. He knows how to get there, but he's going to be sub 6 foot. Like, the body type stuff is going to be a problem for guys. It's always weird because Malcolm Rodriguez's tape was amazing last year. And he tested well as well. And he still didn't go until the 6th round. So that's why I had to put a 6th-round grade on Ivan Pace. I'm like, Ivan Pace is not going to test or look like Malcolm Rodriguez, not going to have the wrestling background. And somehow Malcolm Rodriguez went to the 6th. So it was hard for me to, I think a lot of teams now are just saying, look, you have to hit certain athletic numbers, certain physical numbers for us to consider drafting you in the first 4 rounds. If not, it's a crapshoot 5-6, because a lot of times once you get past the first 2 rounds, a big consideration is special teams. Is this guy a special teams player? Is he a 4-phase special teamer? And that's why you see Holcomb, who got drafted by Washington. You see a lot of guys get pushed. Linebackers are great testers. They get pushed up into the 3rd round and 4th round, who maybe on tape aren't as good as. So Pace is better on tape than a lot of guys who will be drafted ahead of him, simply because he didn't have the traits that typically win on special teams.
And that's a great transition to safety, because I think Sidney Brown's kind of in that same boat. Because another guy that it was a 4-core special teamer, and throw on the Iowa tape, you can see him as a gunner beat Riley Moss, who Riley Moss is a corner that's going to test really well. Beat him as a gunner down the field, make tackles on punt coverage. Like Sidney Brown has some ability to him, but there's also some question marks. So his testing will be really, really important as well.
I'm looking at the weights on your top 15 safeties in this class, and it's striking me how much the game has changed in the last 15 years, because I would have assumed these were, if you gave me this list of weights and said, what position do these people play? I would have said corner.
Yeah. That's in the past. 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, safeties, if you're under 200 pounds, there's several teams that, cross him off. He's not for us. We won't even consider if you're under 200 pounds at safety. Now with the blends of coverages and nickel and what certain schemes are doing, that's a lot different. The top safety this year, Brian Branch, he's more of a nickel, but it'll be interesting what he weighs in at. Is he over under 195? But he's a guy that should test well. And we've talked about it before. He's just
he's a throw on the tape guy. You don't have to worry about him.
Yeah. He's going to run into 4.5s. Like, I don't think he's going to be blazing fast. Antonio Johnson, that's who I'm curious about. I'm really interested to see how he runs, because I like him from A&M. I question how fast he is. I do not question how fast Jair Brown is. I think he is I think Jair Brown is a really talented player. I love the football character, and I think he's going to run really, really well. But looking at it, there's some different players in here that I'm looking at that it will. Kayvon Merriweather, I think, is supposed to run pretty well also from Iowa.
Trey Dean from Florida.
Yeah, you can see kind of a straight line, angular guy. I finished Trey Dean yesterday. I wrote him up. I'm done with all my combine guys, and I kind of wonder if a team's going to try him as a corner.
Hey, he played there. He played corner earlier in his career. They played that star position they have, and then
around a lot
safety. So I think he's
just
right
mental bust left and right, just coverage busts. And I just don't get the sense that he has a great feel for assignments. And sometimes those guys just stick them on the corner only in certain schemes and let them see what they can do. I don't know if I see any monster testers in this group that I've heard about, or monster testers. I do think Jair Brown will test well. I'm interested to see what JL Skinner, the big, long safety from.
He's so tall. This is the one Dane is fascinated by his calves.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
I've never seen a safety have an identical body type to AJ Green, the receiver. I mean, it's identical. Height, weight, the body. It's crazy, and we're talking about a safety compared to AJ Green.
So long.
No, he is, and so that'll be interesting with the testing. I'm interested in Jordan Battle, Alabama, who I don't think is going to be a dynamite tester, but he just has to be a good tester. Can you run a solid 4.5? This guy has so much experience, played 54 games, something like that for Nick Saban. Really solid starter, but does he have the athleticism to be more than just a box guy or a walk down guy? That's I know a lot of scouts are kind of questioning that.
When's the last time that you talked about a huge tester from Alabama? It actually doesn't happen a whole lot. Like, you'll have a guy who's really fast,
Marlon
like
Humphrey.
Jamison Williams,
Yeah.
Marlon Humphrey. Yeah, it's kind of strange because a lot of times Alabama guys are not big vertical leap guys for whatever reason. It's something that I've noticed. I always expect them to be big explosive testers, but they're typically not.
It'll be interesting to see if Georgia goes that way. I mean, well, different strength coaches, but Scott Cochran was the strength coach at Alabama for all those years. He went over to Georgia as a special teams coach. He's now in an off the field role because there were some issues with him. But Scott Sinclair at Georgia, they're very similar trees. I wonder if that winds up being something you see out of Georgia going forward. Now like Jalen Carter will test very well, like and tested well in high school. Like he was a freak in high school.
Broderick Jones, he should be
he's going to be a big tester. Yeah, offensive tackle, Georgia.
So no doubt.
Now we still got running backs to go. Dane, you mentioned you think the fastest 40 will come out of the running back group.
I got to guess this. Let me take.
I think I know who it is.
I'm trying to think, off the top of my head. So let me get these running backs in front of me here. I mean, it could be Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think it could be. But I the guy that. Oh no. I don't know if he's going to run though, but it would be A-Chain probably.
Yeah. Devon A-Chain.
This is a guy that in the spring, so not even a year ago, ran a 20.20 into 200 meters. And obviously 200 meters is different than a 40-yard dash, but still this guy has unbelievable speed and it's instant with him. So I think he's going to test really well.
By the way, he has a 10.14 in his background for the 100 meters.
Let me whet your appetite, by the way, because I talked to a coach who had played Devon A-Chain earlier this week on my podcast about a guy he just signed. So there's a dude named Nicholas Harbor. And if Draft Twitter doesn't know him yet, just get ready. He just signed with South Carolina. He runs a 10.3200. I believe he ran a 20.79 200 indoors. He has legit aspirations to be, an elite track athlete. He is 6'5" and 230.
Oh my gosh! I wasn't ready for that size.
I figured I'd put the twist at the end.
Yeah, 10,300 meters, big deal.
What position is he?
So they initially recruited him as an edge rusher. Then we're transitioning to tight end. Now they're going to play him at receiver. They're like, look, we're going to Megatron you, and that way you don't, because he does have legit aspirations on the track, and so they don't want to beat him up too much, because obviously he can help South Carolina in track as well. So they want to make sure he stays fresh. Wow,
that's impressive. And I mean, and it's something when you talk about track athletes, and that was a big thing with A-Chain was coming into this year. Okay, no more Isaiah Spiller. Mm-hmm. Is this just a track athlete who's trying to play football?
A-Chain's a football player.
Well, and in high school, talking to his coaches, they had to convince him to play track. Like, he didn't run track growing up. I mean, they basically, once he got to high school, football player through and through, and the track coaches were like, all right, you're too fast. You have to run track. And so he did, and then he decided to do it in College Station as well. But this is no doubt about it, a football player. I mean, he, over his 3 years at A&M, averaged like 6.5 yards per carry, led the SEC in all-purpose yards last year. The big question also with him is what's the body type in terms of weight, and how is it packaged on top of him? He's listed at 185, but
he's tough though, and that's the problem.
Yeah, he is.
He's tough, and that toughness can cause him to take on more hits than you want him to.
But you also factor in that as soon as he's done with football, he goes straight to track, indoor, outdoor. And so he hasn't been focusing on adding weight necessarily. And so is at the combine, is he over under 190? That'll be a big thing to watch for, because you look at it, we've seen sub 200-pound backs go very early in the past. You look at Chris Johnson, CJ Spiller, Javid Best. That's 3 first-rounders right there that were under 200 pounds and still went in the first round.
Rare speed, all of them.
Yeah, exactly. But sub 190 pound backs, can't find those guys in the top 50 picks. So that's it. Being
amazing,
at least 190 would be important.
His tape, he's so good between the tackles too, and in the SEC, like it mystifies me how he does it. Like, how does he take those hits and it doesn't seem to really bother him?
This is no, and he's a willing runner between your tackles, but he's you have to put him in the right position at even at 190. I mean, he's not a big guy, so you got to have a plan for Devin Achane. And I think you have to have a plan for Jahmyr Gibbs, but Jahmyr Gibbs is bigger. But it's funny, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to run well. Zach Evans is going to run well. Israel Abanikanda from Pitt.
Abanikanda, yeah,
Kanda. Wow, he runs away from people all the time on tape. I can promise you he's going to run well.
That dude was a touchdown machine.
He was.
And then, sub 11 seconds in the 100 meters in high school. Another guy, yeah.
Keaton Mitchell from East Carolina is another one that can burn. He's got a chance to run sub 4.4s.
Tariq Cohen, type of player. Yeah, small, but yeah, he can move. I'm also interested to see or Sean Tucker. He'll be another one. The track background with him will show, even though I've got questions with him as a player. Zach Charbonnet, kind of the opposite, where I don't expect him to necessarily test outstanding, but can he just test average? That's all he needs to do, because I think his strengths on the football field are patience, vision, balance, so pass catching ability. As long as he tests average, he'll be fine. I think he's a day 2 pick all day.
I think the two guys with the most to win or lose. I think Chase Brown will test okay for. He looks great, cut up like a Greek guy, just a little smaller one. The two guys that I think have the most to gain or lose potentially are Tank Bigsby and Eric Gray, because if they both test well, I think I like some things about these two guys on tape, but it could be the difference between going, 3rd or 4th round and maybe sneaking into the 2nd. That's how important I think this year is from a testing standpoint. Remember, if the track is fast at Indy, then 40 time is going to be relative to the other guys on the on the list, not necessarily historically. And of course, your jumps are your jumps, your 3 cones, your 3 cone. I don't think that changes just because of a fast turf.
I think there's a clump of those running backs. After you get past the top guys, there's just a clump of them, and teams are looking for a reason to break them up, to bust them up. And if a guy like Eric Gray goes out there and tests like he's capable, then maybe that proves to be the difference in why maybe you bump him up a little bit or not. Tyjae Spears from Tulane has some juice, but also the medicals will be important with him.
That's going to be really important for him.
Yeah, no doubt. And so that could be something that changes things a little bit. Kendre Miller from TCU, for a bigger guy, should test pretty well. So yeah, these running backs, Roshan Johnson, another guy who's big, and he should test pretty well. Watching him on special teams and seeing him run down the field, this guy can move, especially for a guy that's bigger at 220 pounds. So this clump of running backs in that late 2nd to early 4th, mid 4th. There's so many of those guys crammed in there, and so teams are just looking for something that can kind of break them up.
All right, guys. Before we go to Indy, you can only do one combine drill. You're going to put your best foot forward. What are we doing?
Gosh. Stretching. I don't know.
Oh, easy. I'm going to do the one with the it's going to hurt, but I'll do the shrimp cocktail with the horseradish.
That's the way to do it. That's the St. Elmo shrimp cocktail is the best combine drill there is.
Another reason why the combine should not move from Indianapolis. Just keep it where it is. Don't break something, or don't fix something that's not broke.
My first time ever in Indianapolis, I was covering a Final Four. I had one of the worst colds I've ever had in my life. The only time I could breathe freely that week was eating the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo.
I don't know. Even the bread is great there, so I can't wait. That'll be and I couldn't go last year because with all the drills at night, you couldn't get away. You're in the stadium and all that. This year, with the drills starting earlier, your nights are a little more freed up. So it's good for the Indianapolis economy.
It is the culinary version of smelling salts. It's going to be great.
It really is.
Gentlemen, we'll see one another in Indy. Perhaps we'll share a shrimp cocktail.
All right. Good stuff.